Hi everyone, my name is Bridget and welcome to my channel. So this message is making room for God to do the impossible. Before I begin, I would just like to clarify that I do not believe in religion. I believe in God and Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ came to show us a way to peace and abundance for all. One of the deepest revelations God has given me is that faith does not begin when we see evidence. It begins when we choose to trust, despite the absence of it. This has been one of the hardest lessons on my journey. I once believed faith meant believing in God, but He revealed that genuine faith is trusting Him before we can see the outcome. As human beings, we are conditioned to believe what we can see with our physical eyes. We want proof before we take the first step. We want certainty before we take the first step. We want guarantees before we let go of control. But God has shown me that His kingdom operates differently. He asks us to trust, and then He reveals the path. This is why faith is so difficult. It requires us to move beyond our own understanding and lean into God's wisdom. Our minds constantly search for logical solutions, but God's solutions often lie beyond what our limited perspective can imagine. Jesus taught us this throughout His ministry. He called ordinary people to leave everything and follow Him without knowing where that journey would lead. He calmed storms when everyone else saw danger. He fed thousands with what appeared to be insufficient. Again and again, He demonstrated that heaven's possibilities are not limited by earth's circumstances. God showed me that we often want Him to remove every obstacle before we move forward. We say, "Show me the way and then I will trust you." But He gently whispers, "Trust me and I will show you the way." There is a profound difference between those two approaches. I realized that many of the obstacles in my life were not only external, they were internal. Fear, doubt, insecurity, and the need to control every outcome became barriers that prevented God from working freely in my life. I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality I was limiting what God could do through me. When I finally surrendered those fears, something remarkable happened. Solutions appeared where I had seen none. Opportunities arrived unexpectedly. People crossed my path at exactly the right time. Circumstances that seemed impossible slowly began to change. From a human perspective, it almost feels like magic. But what God revealed to me is that it is not magic at all. It is the natural result of allowing His wisdom and His timing to work without our constant interference. What appears impossible to us is never impossible to Him. Too often we stand in His way because we insist on understanding everything before we obey. We want to know every step of the journey before taking the first one. Yet faith asks us to take the first step and trust that God already knows the rest. Imagine planting a seed and then digging it up every day to check whether it's growing. It would never have the chance to take root. Faith works the same way. We plant the seed through trust, obedience, and surrender, and then we allow God to do what only He can do. I believe this is why Jesus spoke so often about faith. He knew that without it, we would always remain prisoners of what our eyes could see. But God's kingdom invites us into a greater reality, where love is stronger than fear, hope is stronger than despair, and God's promises are greater than our circumstances. The world often teaches us to rely only on ourselves. It tells us that success comes through control, planning, and striving, while wisdom and responsibility are important. God has shown me that true transformation begins when we recognize that we cannot carry everything alone. Faith is not weakness. Faith is courage. It takes courage to forgive when you have been hurt. It takes courage to keep loving when others reject you. It takes courage to follow God's calling when no one else understands it. And it takes courage to continue walking when you cannot see the destination. This journey has also taught me that God is transforming us before He transforms our circumstances. He is developing patience where there was anxiety, peace where there was fear, and trust where there was control. The miracle often begins within us, long before we see it around us. Perhaps this is why Jesus said that faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. The mountain may not always be made of rock. Sometimes it is the mountain of our own disbelief. Sometimes it is our past, our wounds, or our stories we have believed about ourselves. As those mountains began to move, new possibilities emerge. I also believe this lesson is essential if we are to help create the kingdom of God here on earth. We cannot create a new world while living from fear, and we cannot become way showers while remaining trapped by doubt. God's kingdom is revealed through people who trust Him enough to live differently. Every act of forgiveness, every step of obedience, every decision to choose love over fear becomes a testimony that God is still working in the world today. So if you are facing uncertainty, or I encourage you not to measure God's ability by what you can currently see. Your circumstances are temporary, but God's faithfulness is eternal. Faith does not deny reality. It simply believes that God is greater than reality as we understand it. The deepest revelation God has given me is that when we stop demanding to see before we believe, we make room for Him to work in ways beyond our imagination. We discover that the obstacle was never bigger than God. It was often our own inability to trust Him completely. And perhaps that is one of the greatest invitations Jesus ever gave us, to walk by faith and not by sight. Because when we step out of God's way and place our lives in His hands, He can dissolve obstacles, open doors no human could open, and lead us into a future far greater than anything we could have planned for ourselves. So I'm standing in a very difficult living situation at the moment, and I've been in this position for a while, and I have to trust that God still has me here for a reason, for a purpose. Just like Jesus was a good worker in His time, I'm here doing whatever God needs me to do. So I hope this message helps someone today. Wishing you a magical weekend. God bless.